7 Weeks is America's pro-life coffee. It's premium coffee delivered right to your doorsteps. All roast available, and it's absolutely delicious. Start your morning off with 7 Weeks coffee. It's not just drinking coffee, it's drinking coffee with a purpose. Use my code VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vashti Sarah, and you are tuned into another episode of All the Things, where we literally talk about all the things. Today, I have the honor of interviewing, chatting with Becky. She will be talking about the foster care system and homelessness. This is a two-part episode of all things foster care and homelessness. She has extensive background in this. So I just want to give you the floor, Becky. First of all, thank you for saying yes. Tell us a little bit about you and Jane Around the World, because that is essentially how I came to find out about you, because my brother knows you from Jane Around the World, from his workplace. So all the connections came together. So yeah, Becky, the floor is yours.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. It's definitely an honor and a privilege. You know, Hez and he and Sydney hold a very special place in my heart, because from the very beginning, like the first time that and we can share a little bit of this story, but some of the first footage that we needed to film for Jane Around the World, before we knew anything, like knew where we were going with any of these things, they did this for us. Like Hez was literally like hanging out the side of the car in downtown Houston, like filming up in the sky, like the whole 9 yards, you know what I mean? So, I mean, they hold, and they are always there. So they're very, very special to us. So I'm excited to be here. You know, foster care is one of those things that, I love that you say I have an extensive background in, because I feel like it's one of those things you never quite arrive at.
Right.
Because every situation is different. Every caseworker is different. Every child is different. Every judge, I feel like, is different, you know. So it's just so situational, even though there are all of these minimum standards and all of these things. But it's just, you know, we have fostered 14 children, and then we have 2 of them back. So I say we've fostered 16 times, but there's some of those are repeat children. And you know, I hate even kind of saying that, because it feels like they're a piece of property or something, like they're repeats. You know what I mean? But this is right. Like this is a child, and this is their future, and this is the fundamentals of their life, you know, that we're dealing with right now. So anyway, I don't know if it's extensive, but it definitely has been baptism by fire. Wow. And we've been fostering for about 2.5 years. And so we've done that many children in that amount of time.
That's pretty impressive.
It's a little bit crazy. You know, some of them were overlaps. Like we had a couple of sibling groups, and then some that stayed a longer time, some that were very short time. So, and kind of everything in between. But it's been a journey for sure. And it is the Lord's work, because, you know, I joke, and I know that we are recording, so I am joking. But if outside of the Lord, I would want to choke some of these children out, but I don't. It's a joke, you know, it's a joke, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I say that about teachers too. You have to have a special calling, because I know it is a joke, but at the same time, you can get so agitated and frustrated with children that if you don't have the right mindset and heart, you'll hear the horror stories of foster care system where their fosters were beating them or abusing them or talking down at them. But having a heart that resets and understand, this is my why, this is my purpose. Oh, I can just choke you right now, but I'm going to walk in love. You know, it's a real thing. Absolutely.
For sure. I mean, real live example yesterday, I have 3 littles right now. They're 5, 6, and 7. Ooh. And so my biological children are almost 18, 21, and 25. Wow. So this is like, you know, they're doing elementary again. I don't even know what's happening. Anyway, one of them is very challenging. She's had a little more, she has a little more behaviors than the others. Anyway, we Had to literally pull over on the side of the road yesterday because she was having a meltdown. It was a whole situation. And so we pull over, I get out, I walk around the car. I'm like trying to get her calmed, make sure she puts her seatbelt back on, these things.
Yeah.
And I get back in the car and she continues. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, here we are. We got a sinner. I just start praying out loud, like just declaring victory over her and her behaviors. And she looks at me like I have 45 heads. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, she has literally lost her mind.
Yep.
I know that's how she's looking at me, because I feel like I was going to lose my mind. I knew that I wasn't, but it was like, you get to a point that you're frustrated because you can't fix the situation, because you don't even know where the root of this behavior is actually coming from. It's not about, I put the watch in the wrong place. You know what I mean? That's not what it's actually about, but that's what triggered the meltdown. And so then you're trying to treat something that you don't even really know where it's coming from, which is impossible. So,
wow. I
make it sound really scary. There's so many wins. Okay. Like, if anybody out there is thinking about foster care, you should totally do it. It's not always meltdowns, but there's so many wins. There's so many rewarding times, there's so many times that you see truly just the deposits of Jesus that have been in every conversation, that have been around every kitchen table, that have been in every car ride, that have been, like you see fruit begin to bloom. And that's so rewarding and such a blessing, and keeps us doing what we're doing in foster care. I mean, when you're talking about just even the statistics of nationwide, there's 370,000 children ish. Okay. I think that's a 2022 study in foster care. That's ages 0 to 18 years old. Okay. If you break that down to our region, there's 5,000 or so in our region, which is really kind of outside of Harris County, because they consider Region 6 not inclusive of Harris County. So if you include Harris County in that, you're looking at like 7,600 kids that are in care of some sort. And so it takes our yes, right? And it doesn't mean it is the easiest yes that you will ever have to say, as far as like, yes, of course I want to care for children, right? Of course I want to care for the next generation. Of course I want to see children prosper and be better. But it's also the hardest yes, because it changes your life completely. Wow. No matter if you foster one child or you foster 50 children, it changes your life completely, because you truly are meeting this individual, this person, right? Because they are people, they are human beings, you're meeting them where they are, and helping them discover where they can be. But it's a process of, it's not about you. It's not about you. And sometimes that's very difficult to, like when you come in and you think, oh, I'm going to think of foster care and it's going to be beautiful and we're going to help this kid feel loved and know that they're wanted and like all of these things. But then, oh, by the way, they're going to go back to parents' house, or maybe there's an aunt or uncle that surfaced after a year that you've had them, or maybe, you know what I mean? Like, and oh, well, they may come in spitting in your face. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Are you still going to be down for it?
Right. Because
knowing that. But when you're talking about whatever 6,000, 7,000 kids that are right here in our area that need you, they need you because their parents aren't able to do things that they need, right? And when we first got into foster care, it was for the children. And I heard this at some point along the way that, we got into it for the children, but we stay into it for the parents. Because it is so beautiful whenever we have the opportunity to invest in the biological parents, to build a relationship, to bridge a gap there, that we can then come alongside them. Their child, may not be in our home anymore, but we can still give our support and our resource and our love and encouragement and prayers, by way of this parent. And it truly is generational change.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
I know I'm all over the place with this, but I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Because it matters. This
Yeah,
is our
I can
future.
tell. So what would you say is the biggest challenge in terms of foster care and any gaps that you've noticed?
Man, so the biggest challenge is definitely a loaded question, because I think the system itself is the biggest challenge.
Yes.
You know, dealing with caseworkers, which there are some that are absolutely amazing, and there are some that are not. You know, they're doing this for a job. I feel like if you're talking about it from a systematic approach, like the caseworkers dealing with DFPS, we're in Texas, you know, dealing with DFPS is probably one of the most difficult, frustrating things, because nobody talks to each other. There's a breakdown between what CASA thinks and the caseworker thinks and the doctor thinks and the psychologist thinks. And then it gets to the judge, and the judge is ultimately the one making the decision.
Yeah.
And you're the foster parent. So you're a glorified babysitter that they don't necessarily want to hear from or care to hear from. I can't tell you how many times I've been stuck in a breakout room on a virtual court, you know, hearing, because they don't care what I have to say and they don't want me to hear what they have to say. Wow. I'm like, hi, hello, I have the children.
Right, exactly. I'm the one with them 24/7.
Yes. But you know what? It is that the foster parents in general have been tainted in the foster community, because for a long time there was, you know, it's harder to happen these days, but you know, you were getting 10 children so that you could collect this check, and you were neglecting them anyway. And like, it's the whole Annie situation, right? And so it's harder for that to happen now, because you have to, number one, the licensing process is different. Number two, so you have to provide evidence that you can support yourself outside of any, you know, subsidy that you would get. But also 6 is your maximum. So you can have, and that's biological, foster, or adopted. Or if you even want to go to kinship placement, like you can have no more than 6 children in your home. Wow. And so, you know, so it makes it alludes to like, it's a little bit more difficult to be able to just stack up checks for some of the things that have caused some of the tainting in the system. From a standpoint of the children, I would say that the most challenging part is the unknown. And I know that is very, very vague, but what I mean by that is that you only know what the piece of paper says, or what the case manager may have picked up whenever they picked up the children from the police that were in the home, or, you know, depending on whatever the situation is. I mean, you just have a very limited amount of information. And most of the time it is skewed, because it's a game of telephone. Yep. And, you know, it's not really even what the truth is. And so you're it's like playing Clue, you know, like who done it and where did it come from and where are we going? You know what I mean? Like it's challenging, because you think that you're receiving one type of situation, but it actually turns out to be a whole nother type of situation, which means that you're dealing with different triggers, you're dealing with different trauma, you're dealing with different behaviors, you're dealing, you know what I'm saying, than what you may have anticipated. Right. Or even and I'm not sure how deep things get. I've listened to some of your podcasts, but if I go too far, like holler at your girl. But you know, like sexual trauma is huge. Yeah. And I don't know the correct statistics, so don't quote me on this, but it's a large percentage. I mean, it's like 60% of the kids that are in care have been sexually abused some way, shape, or form. So whether that's they've been exposed to pornography, or they have been physically touched or abused themselves, you know, or witnessed that some way, some form, right? So when you have that exposure at a young age, I'm talking toddler age all the way up to, you know, the 18, that brings a whole different element to the table, right? And so then when you don't know those things, I'm saying this as an example of when you don't know those things, and you believe that you're getting a basic child, right, that was neglected, didn't have enough food, didn't have running water, right?
Right.
Let's just say that's, but really actually what was happening was uncle was abusing them from the age of 3. They came into care at the age of 8, like you're learning this after the fact. And so then they have behaviors, you have children in your home, you have to protect, you've got to protect them. So it becomes very challenging because of the unknowns, you know?
Yeah. Wow, that is scary. I mean, a friend of mine, similar situation, they brought home a baby. I believe the baby was about 4 or 5 years old. On paper, it was pretty simple, just needed a home. And they had other children in the house, and the 4 or 5 year old was molested and touched. And when they brought this little boy into the home, he went around touching the other kids on their private parts. But that's because what he knew. But no one told them this is what was going on. So they had to report back and let them know, hey, we had no clue this child was being molested. But also they had no clue either. But these whenever the child presents themselves, their mannerism, their behavior, all of that, none of that can be written on paper per se.
Sure.
It's you who's fostering. You're the one that sees those things.
Right.
You're the one that has to monitor that in your own home.
For sure. And then it's almost like, okay, what is, when you're dealing with a 4 or 5 year old, what's kind of normal curiosity,
right?
You know what I mean? And you report, you're mandated to report everything, right? So then that opens up a whole nother, like, okay, well then we go down this investigation route, and then you're not necessarily you're under investigation, but because there's an investigation, then there's investigators coming into your home and they're talking to you, they're talking to kids, like all the things. And so it does complicate things. I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of their schedule and their what they require, what's mandatory, what's not, whatever. So it becomes a little bit of a daunting situation whenever you have things like that. You know what I mean? Just because there's so many variables. So.
All right. So let's talk about the youth that have been aged out of the foster care system. What happens to them?
So this looks a lot different now than what it used to. And I will apologize in advance because I'm super passionate about this. So we have fostered everything from baby. I think the youngest that we've had is 11 months old, all the way to 18. Wow. And so about when we first, one of our third, I think she was third or fourth that we had, she was 17, she was pregnant. And she would turn 18 while she was with us. She'd have the baby and she would turn 18 while she was with us. And so it was really kind of our first go round with like really what happens after they age out, because you hear all of these things and whatever, but really our own experience of what happens, So we told her there's an opportunity for them to stay. So they age out at 18 years old. Okay. But they have an opportunity to stay in extended care until they're 21 if they choose to. Now, I'm going to say this with a caveat because now it looks very different because essentially, these are my words, these are not the words of the system, but essentially DFPS, the placement portion, is being defunded. And so it's going to home, what they're calling home and community-based care. Okay. So I say this because it's important for the direction that aged out foster youth is going. Okay. So what that means is that rather than you have like placement through DFPS or CPS, whatever we want to call it, where they're taking conservatorship of the child, and then they're finding an agency, a foster care agency that then has a licensed foster care home, blah, blah, blah. That element's taken out, and that child is then placed with a foster care agency as the conservator, essentially, and then they're placing them in a home. So DFPS is cut out of the placement portion.
Wow.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So this is important for a lot of different reasons, but specifically for aged out youth, what's happening is there's an influx of what they call SILs, which are supervised independent living. Okay. And in a SIL, you can, the majority of the time, and I'm not going to speak for all SILs at this point, but the majority of the time they have to be in extended foster care. So they have to have actually signed the paperwork to say, hey, I'm staying in extended foster care. There's different requirements that they have to meet, like they have to be a full-time student or working full-time or a combination of both. There's other different stipulations that they have to abide by to be able to stay in extended care. They could be in a traditional placement, but most of the time they're trying to transition into the SIL. So, but what this home and community-based service situation has created is an influx of SILs. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so whenever which I know we haven't really talked much about what Jane Around the World does, but whenever we first started our journey of opening up this facility, there was really kind of one other agency in this Houston proper surrounding areas that was really targeted to helping aged out foster youth, right? And so, but after this home and community-based services situation, there's incentive for more SILs because you're getting paid for, and if we want to call them group homes, whatever we want to call them, right? Like if you're getting paid by the head of the child or young adult that is in your SIL. Yeah. And so, and it's super easy. This is the scary part. It's super easy to get certified as a SIL. And I'm saying that from a situation of like, we went down the road because Jane Around the World doesn't receive any state or federal funding, but we were considering, because of what we're doing on this other side with the group home situation, like, okay, well, maybe the resource and the non-residential services that are offered through some of their SIL programs, we could take advantage of. Do we want to do this? Whatever. So we started to go down that route. And it was literally, you take online courses. There was like 6 of them, I think. Okay. So it's online through the website, whatever. You have a health and safety inspection. So basically, like, do you have fire extinguishers? Do you have an exit plan? Type thing. And you do a background check and fingerprints. Okay. That's it. That's all. Okay.
So any Joe Schmo could do it.
Anybody, girlfriend. Okay. So you understand that what that means as that, Jimmy Johnny from down the road can say, okay, I'm going to do this. He has ill intentions or she has ill intentions. And this has now become, not only before this situation was 62.5%, and I'm off, it's anywhere between 60 and 65% of the sex trafficking homes that have been broken up. They're aged out foster youth, or they are youth that have been in care at some point in their life, like 65%. Wow. That's before we say that, okay, now it's super easy to get certified as a SIL. Mm-hmm. So now I can do this. And now, number one, I'm getting paid for them. I'm getting paid by the head for them to have them in my home. Mm-hmm. And then they're making money for me too. Yep. And I understand that I'm being very, very presumptuous, but what I'm also saying is that there's real statistics behind this.
Yes.
Okay? These are vulnerable children that are doing whatever it takes to get by, mm-hmm. right? When they are aging out, let me go back to the girl that was with me, right? She is looking at the judge in the face, and the judge is like, why would you not stay in extended care? Mind you, at this point, this young lady is in my home. Mm-hmm. And we're telling her, whether you stay in extended care or not, you can stay with us. But she wants literally nothing to do with foster care. Okay. Wow. It doesn't matter. So she looks the judge in the face. I'm sitting there, and this is like the Lord said, okay, this is it. Right. So judge says, why in the world would you not stay in extended care? We're going to do this. You'll have a car allowance, because at that point they had that. You'll have a housing allowance. We're going to pay for your school. Like, there's all of these different benefits that come along with staying in extended care. And she looks the judge in the eyes and she says, you could give me $1 million right now, and I would still tell you I'm not doing it, because I have been in foster care in and out since I was 5 years old. And quite frankly, you guys have done a pretty crappy job. And I feel like I can maybe do a little bit better on my own. I want nothing to do with you. I don't want you to tell me what school I have to go to, what doctor I have to see, what therapist I have to see, whatever. And so that's what's happening. It was like, that's it. Like they've never been able to make a decision on their own.
Yep.
Throughout this whole process. They've been told what to do, where to do, how to do.
Right. Where to go.
Yes. And she was like, peace out, Girl Scout. Like, I'm out. And, we had to be made the enemy for her so that she could feel like it was okay to leave. Right.
Yep.
The Lord is so faithful and has brought all of that relationship back around, and she spends holidays with us. We're BB videos to her children. Like, like it's beautiful now, but she wanted absolutely nothing to do. And she's a classic example of what it would look like if she had not had some of the support that was created, you know what I mean? Very easily could have fallen into that entrapment.
Yeah.
But when they age out at 18 and they say they don't want to stay in extended care, and let's just say that they're in CWAP, which is child without placement, they're living in motels. It's happening all around you. They literally at midnight, 12:01 a.m., they turn 18, they have to be out.
Wow. And
so you have traffickers that are, I wish I was kidding, girl. I wish I was kidding. But there are traffickers that are sitting outside of those hotel motels, because they know that that's what's going on there.
Yeah.
And that girl walks down the stairs, or that boy, I'm just speaking about girls and, right this moment. She's got her little trash bag full of stuff. She walks down, she starts off down the sidewalk. Somebody pulls up next to her, was like, hey, are you hungry? Like, do you need a ride somewhere? Yeah. She's vulnerable. She wants to be loved. She gets in the car. I'll take you to McDonald's. How about you just spend the night at my place tonight? And then you never see her again.
Wow.
And it's happening every single day right here.
It makes me angry.
Yeah, it should make all of us angry. But everybody's like, oh man, this is just like such a daunting task. Like, what can I do about it? What can one person, what can one person do about it? Well, you know what? Everybody is not called to foster. I understand that. But everybody is called, if you are a believer, I know it's another strong statement, but I tend to do.
It's biblical. Take care of the widows and the fosters.
Yes. Orphans are, they are right in the hand of the Lord. And so and it's for the least of these, right? Regardless of whether it's foster care, it's orphan, it's homeless, it's unsheltered, whatever we want to say. He calls us to them, and so we all play a part, whether it's providing a meal for a foster family, whether it's taking some clothes to, a foster closet or a clothing drive, because you know that it's going to go to those needy children. Or if it's a little bit more in depth and you're providing transportation for, somebody that wouldn't have transportation otherwise. And then a little bit more in depth where you're providing, you know what I mean? All the way to you're taking people in your home, or you're opening up a shelter, or you're doing, whatever. But we're all called to play a part. And whenever we are so much better together, and we can make such a stronger impact whenever we're locking arms and doing it together.
Yeah. What would you say are the efforts that the foster care system is currently working on to change what's happening, the negative side of the foster care system? Or are there any?
I don't know if I'm the right one to answer that question. I would say that one of their attempts is this home and community-based services initiative that's happening. I think that it can be a very good thing. I do. While I don't like what it has created on the aged out side or the SIL side, I do believe that it can be very, very beneficial all the way around for kids in care, because whenever you have a child placement agency that have people working within those organizations that truly do care, that are there for the children, that are not there for the number, you know what I mean? It takes it out of the government's hand, and this is kind of, overarching, but puts it back in the church's hand. It can't be anything but good, but it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road. So I feel like that's probably part of getting there. But, I know that there's many more that are much more on the legislative side that can speak so much better to that than I can. I'm kind of in the trenches.
Yeah. So before we wrap up this segment, Can you provide, if possible, the correlation between foster care involvement and the juvenile justice system? Have you seen a link to that, a strong link to it?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Statistically, so this isn't one that I talk about a lot, so I had to write it down. So statistically, 25% are incarcerated within the first 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
So if they hadn't already been incarcerated beforehand. So you have so many so there's the RTCs, which are the residential treatment centers, that whenever you have children that have behaviors as such or have done things, I mean, whatever it is, it could have been criminal acts, maybe not, maybe it's just behavior oriented, but they go into these RTCs, which I don't necessarily, there's not a whole lot of great ones. Some of them, it's just they're providing a bed and a meal, and then it's militant, which isn't helpful. And so I think that there's a direct correlation. Obviously, whenever they're aging out and they're trying to figure out things on their own, this alludes to a whole lot of exposure to things that are criminal activity,
right,
from, breaking and entering to be able to get things that they need, to stealing, and that sort of thing, to drug use, to, so they fall into that entrapment. I don't know statistically how many are like from a juvenile justice system situation, or even just as an adult, like how many of those have been in care at some point. I don't know the statistic on that. I would be interested to know, because I know that it's a lot, you know. But when you're talking statistically, 50% of aged out are dead, homeless, or in prison within the first year.
Wow.
I mean, it's got to be a pretty hefty number, Oh
yeah, you could only assume that it's pretty hefty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, we're going to close out this first segment because I'm eager to talk about Jane Around the World and homelessness and how this all came about. But thank you for giving a snippet, because that's just a snippet of your background in the foster care system. Absolutely. And your heart behind it. And then the next segment, we'll just dive right deep into all things homelessness.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All righty. Every Life is America's pro-life diaper and wipes company. My family absolutely loves them. There's no harsh toxins. There's no chemicals. It's perfectly safe for your little one. We love Every Life, their mission, their vision, everything about them. Use my code VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order.